connectivity unleashed. As the boundaries blur between online and real life, we continue to rely on digital innovation and connectivity to transform our world. From the metaverse and NFTs to connected devices and IoT, this year's MWC themes will spark bold new ideas to create a positive future. As an industry, we pave the way for transformation and find new ways to help other industries innovate. And now, together, we continue our exciting 5G journey, delivering on our industry's commitments to tackle the mobile internet usage gap and reducing our industry's carbon footprint, creating a better future for all. Because together, we will unlock the full power of connectivity so that people, industry, and society thrive. This week, in our iconic host city, we will put our convictions to work. For our businesses, for our next generation of leaders, and for the world. Are you ready? It's time.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me? Fantastic. Wonderful. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third keynote session of Mobile World Congress Africa 2022. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Mayo Akuyoro. I'm a partner at McKinsey & Company based out of our Lagos office, and I lead our fintech practice for Africa, and I will be your session moderator for today. Today's session is looking at the future of fintech and what it holds for Africa. And we have a roster of very exciting speakers who will be taking us through sort of what is happening on the continent, what the future for fintech holds, and what the impact we're seeing of fintech across our markets. Our first speaker today is going to be Sitoyo, who is the Managing Director for M-Pesa and the acting CFO for Safaricom, who will be taking us through the outcomes of a white paper that they're about to release about Africa Connected. So it's my pleasure this morning to introduce Sitoyo to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayoa, for that introduction. The story for me for M-Pesa, before I speak about M-Pesa, I just wanted to give a little bit about my journey to this beautiful country and this beautiful city. So yesterday I was at work and finished work quite late and barely made it to the airport. And I must thank the Spanish president who was in Kenya because the airspace was closed, and actually I would have missed my flight if it wasn't that the flight was delayed because of him. So I must thank the president of Spain for being in the country. But I think what happened is because of my rush, and I was coming in today, for this session, and I'll be leaving later this afternoon, but I did not come with my wallet. Normally when I travel, I have a small travel pack where I can keep my credit cards. That's the only time I use a credit card or a debit card. I'm always on M-Pesa. But thanks to a new friend, Christian, the MTN Rwanda leader, I have been able to operate in Rwanda without having my card. So I have met two fantastic taxi drivers, Jean-Baptiste and Pascal, who have been amazed that I've been able to pay them for my taxi services via my M-Pesa app. Yesterday at the airport, actually, he called a few taxi guys to see, man, can you see this technology? It actually works in Rwanda, that I could pay him. I could see his name. I actually show his name because we've got a name check for international money transfer with MTN Rwanda, and he was surprised I knew all his 3 names. And so it just shows the power of what we are trying to do in connecting people in Africa to opportunities. It's people to people and people to opportunities. And it's a great testament of this story that's happening across the continent, not only for business, for customers, but more importantly for SMEs and micro SMEs, and these 2 gentlemen that I've actually interacted with and are taking me to the airport from here, and I'll be paying them in the same way, the courtesy of MTN Rwanda. But today is about the future of fintech, and I'm pleased to be here representing the Vodafone and Safaricom family with regards to mobile money. M-Pesa has been there for 15 years. The other day I was told that the iOS started, we started in March, the iOS started in September. I wish I had the same market cap as Apple 15 years later. They are at 1 trillion. I'm still valued at about $10 billion, so long way to catch up with them. But M-Pesa was started mainly to increase financial inclusion, and it's a safe and convenient and cost-effective method for transferring money, making payments from the advent of 2G, 3G, and now 4G and 5G smartphones. Today, really excited about what we are announcing today, because over the past years, Safaricom, Vodacom, and Vodafone Group have been running a campaign called Africa Connected. And this results in producing white papers with regard to how we see the industry and how mobile coverage is growing, how we modernize our networks, and also work towards closing the digital divide on the continent. And today I'm really excited to announce that we are launching the latest Africa Connected white paper, and I'll be speaking a little bit about it, which examines the impact of mobile money to accelerate the United Nations Development goals. Okay. So this report finds that countries with successful mobile money adoption see an average annual growth rate in per capita GDP that is 1 percentage point higher than countries where mobile money adoption is not successful. So you can see why mobile money is important in the continent, because it does provide a significant impact in growing our economies. However, in sub-Saharan Africa today, 45% of the adult population remains financially excluded. And barriers of inclusion range from lack of documentation, that's the KYC, for opening of accounts, low financial literacy, to unaffordable banking fees, and a lack of rural-based banking institutions. But without access to connectivity as a starting point, those who have historically been excluded from the traditional financial services will continue to rely on cash, and we know all the problems associated with cash, and platforms such as ourselves, MTN, Airtel, and others continue to play a critical role in changing this. As a result, financially excluded citizens will continue to struggle to save, borrow, and manage financial shocks, as we've seen during the COVID pandemic era. Mobile financial services can extend financial inclusion, and more importantly today, financial health, to every community that the UN Social Development Goals were created to uplift. The IFC has attributed impressive growth, decade-long growth in financial inclusion in areas where mobile money has been, and we're encouraged to see that that is continuing to grow. A recent survey for Africa Connected paper estimated that 17.6 million people in Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, and Mozambique alone have been part of this, have not been part of any formal financial services, and have made accessing everything from bank accounts to loan accounts more convenient. Whether customers use agents embedded in our communities or the new M-Pesa super apps, and the super apps we do have two, one for businesses and one for consumers. A recent consumer survey for the Africa Connected paper estimated, another key success to the mobile financial services platform is that we have been flexible and innovative in designing KYC systems, working with regulators, and that's good to see regulators such as the Central Bank of Kenya who are here, and we've worked very closely with them with regard to KYC. The sample surveyed by Africa Connected indicates that around 12.3 million users in the 4 countries covered have now access to easy credit through the M-Pesa ecosystem. Just to give you an example, today, over $30 million is lent on a daily basis on M-Pesa, and roughly there are 61 mobile loans issued in the system every second. Some of the challenges we are facing with regard to KYC, with regard to regulations, with regard to taxation, and I'll be speaking a little bit about that when it comes to looking forward. The bottom line is that platforms such as M-Pesa are key to giving the underserved or the excluded in developing markets access to modern, secure financial systems that better their lives. And we strongly believe that if the community is successful, then we as business will continue to be successful. So looking forward, the question becomes, how do we accelerate the benefits that mobile financial services bring to the African continent? And more importantly, how do we mitigate the new emerging risks? There remains key barriers, including the need to create a level playing field between the traditional financial institutions as well as the new emerging fintech digital ecosystems. We need to recognize the traditional rails are not a big barrier to the growth of financial inclusion. As such, a risk-based approach to KYC requirements for basic financial services will bring more people in sub-Saharan Africa into this new digital financial ecosystem. As we extend mobile services to more people, we encourage regulators, it's good to see them here, to simultaneously introduce stronger consumer protection mechanisms. Today, consumer data protection is something that we believe needs to be enhanced to ensure that customers' data, whether it's in-country or cross-border, is actually protected. We also want to see and work with policy makers to prioritize protecting of user data, and also embrace new technologies. You know, I will not finish without saying, when we look at big tech, whether it's the big American companies, the big Chinese companies that are here, it's very easy for them to operate in the African continent. But when it comes to us, we make our own barriers, and this makes mobile financial services very expensive. So we in, for example, 8 countries, and MTN, I think 17 countries, but we have to replicate our platform 17 times or 8 times in every single country. But big tech come in and they have cloud platforms and operate in the African continent in a free way. So it's taking huge amounts of resources for us to replicate the same services across ourselves, all the players. And we have to look at that as an industry, as regulators, and say, how do we encourage that? Otherwise, the mobile money platforms will be operated on cloud services by big tech within our continent, and we will lose out by not developing products and services that are relevant to our continent. The future of mobile money is bright, and I'd like to highlight the importance of collaboration between industry and government. We seek to close the digital and financial divides across the continent. Partnerships between operators, regulators, policymakers, and international institutions are absolutely vital to help shape the fintech and digital ecosystem in Africa. So thank you very much, and looking forward to the engagements today.
Thank you very much, Titoyo. I think the statistic you mentioned about GDP per capita, not even GDP, but GDP per capita being 1% higher is something that I'm noodling on, because one of the things we talk about is the potential for technology to solve problems, and one of the things we have is economic growth. So I'm looking forward to our discussion later on. It's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Ngozi Megwa, who is the Senior Vice President with MasterCard EMEA. She is the Senior Vice President of Digital Partnerships, and will be talking to us this morning about technology and digital and its potential for growth on the continent. Please put your hands together for Ngozi.
Hello, everyone. And it's so nice to be here in person. I think the last time we were here was like 4 years ago. I have an interesting story, not quite as digital as Sitoyo's, but I'll tell you where I'm going with it. So just like Sitoyo, I was traveling a lot, and I flew in last night, and I got to the hotel at like 8:30 p.m. and realized that I left my toothbrush. So I quickly called the hotel concierge and said, how can I get a toothbrush? And they said, no problem, we'll get you a toothbrush. And it just made me think, right? The hotel thought about the fact that there will be guests like me who will have these needs, and therefore they need to provide access to solutions. And so that is what MasterCard is about, as you will see today. It's about how do we leverage our capabilities, our technology, to provide access, meet needs of our partners and our customers and fintechs. I'm so proud to be African, I'll just say that. Why? Because Africa continues to remain at the forefront of digital transformation. And digital wallets, in particular mobile money, plays such a critical role in enabling this. As you can see from the stats there, this was a report by the GSMA in 2022. $701 billion worth of value that went through mobile money, 70% of global transactions. And that, I think, is a very interesting and important statistic for us, because this is what is fueling the growth of fintech in Africa. Fintech companies, large, medium, small, they all play a very critical role in widening the reach of financial services that we all know exist in our region. They provide access to services like loans, insurances, payments, investments, you name it. And Africa remains at the forefront of this transformation. So where does MasterCard come in? I'm sure a lot of you will be thinking, well, actually, when you go to the street and ask somebody, who is MasterCard? They'll say, well, MasterCard's a credit card company. Well, actually, we're not a credit card company. We are a technology company in the global payments industry. And we exist to enable partners leverage our technology to drive digital and financial inclusion across multiple markets that we serve. How do we do this, right? We work with telecom operators, we work with fintechs, we work with large e-tailers and different merchants, and we provide them with that single technology stack that enables a myriad of use cases across their ecosystem. We do this leveraging best-in-class API technology, use cases, capabilities, emerging technology such as AI, blockchain, biometrics, to provide these scalable ecosystems for our partners. We put our money where our mouth is. We have a program called StartPath. And in our StartPath program, we actually engage with late-stage startups and provide them with knowledge, capabilities, technology, and access to solutions and services that really help them grow their business. You can see we have close to 2,000 startups that we engage with on a yearly basis. And really, through our capabilities, we power and enable them to get more investment to grow their businesses. Fintechs, they are at the heart of digital transformation. We work with, to date, fintechs in over 172 countries, from SMEs in retail, to farmers in the agri-space, to IoT providers in energy, utility. We work with myriads of fintechs across multiple sectors to continue to power and enable this digital inclusion. Now let's go into a little bit of the how. What exactly do we do with our technology? And I'm going to take a step back, and I'll probably refresh our minds about some of the payment trends that we've seen that have been accelerated since the pandemic. If you look at it from a consumer's perspective, what are they looking for now? They're now seeking more embedded, personalized experiences, some of which Sitoyo spoke about today. They want access to financial services, but they also want more services. You know, they want access to savings products, loan products, but all in a very personalized, contextualized way. If you look at SMEs, they're also looking to digitize their business. So we know and we talk a lot about access to working capital. Well, guess what? It's difficult for them to get access to working capital if there's not enabling technology that allows providers to credit score them and provide them with, and get necessary information to be able to provide this access to them. So, but all of this, as digital payments and digital wallets explode, a very robust digital ID infrastructure becomes very important as well as cybersecurity. So, with that context in mind, let's start with the embedded experiences. Artificial intelligence plays a key role. Why? Because it enables us and our partners to really leverage the power of data to get to understand these customers, to understand the patterns of behavior with these customers, and to be able to personalize these experiences for these consumers as well. So artificial intelligence plays a critical role, and at MasterCard, we're seeing multiple applications of this. We have AI for managing credit risk, where we work with very large global and regional institutions to allow them to forecast delinquency rates, for example, and manage credit risk. If you go to the retail industry, we work with retailers who want to implement global loyalty programs, but with local relevance, right? Because it has to be relevant to the local player. So the consumers locally have to be engaged. You need the power of AI to personalize and contextualize these programs. So AI is playing a very critical role in how we're supporting our players with technology. Data. We all know how important data is. But I think the key here is, how do you triangulate this data to provide our partners with this 360-degree view of their customers? How do we merge telco data, fintech data, payments data together in a very seamless way that allows our partners to use the data in a timely fashion without compromising on data security? I spoke about personalization engines previously. Customers now want more. It's called the power of one. Whether it's a farmer in the village or a retailer in the town, they want you to know who they are. And you can only do that leveraging the power of technology. Biometrics. Digital payments are exploding. Payments are becoming more transparent. It's very, very important to be able to manage this digital ID infrastructure and authentication in a very robust manner. Biometrics play a very critical role in doing that, but also in driving this convenience factor that our consumers and merchants are starting to demand. SME solutions we've spoken about. And beyond that as well, it's important for us to continue to work with our communities as well, right? To help them drive sustainability goals. So we also have platforms that empower our partners to build these community-led programs that have a real impact in the different markets that they operate in. Just conscious of time, I'm not going to go through the reason why the fintech opportunity is great. Well, you know it. But we've just launched a white paper, right? So the results for us are they're not surprising, especially in Africa. Fintechs grew by 81%. About 61% of the $2.6 billion of venture capital that went into fintech was from Africa, with markets like South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya being at the forefront of it. But there are still needs, like we've spoken about. So at MasterCard, our role will remain how we continue to leverage our technology, not only to meet the needs, the very basic needs, we could argue, of some of our consumers, but also help Africa evolve in this digital payments journey by leveraging the power of next generation technology to make it more scalable, affordable, convenient, and accessible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ngozi. I think one of the things that I was reflecting on as you were speaking was just thinking through the power of collaboration and all the various different people you spoke about and how MasterCard is trying to bring everyone together. So I think that is a topic of discussion that's going to be very, very interesting. Next speaker, who's going to come and talk to us about the future of fintech and works for a fintech on the continent, is Bankole, who is the Chief Regulatory Officer of Flutterwave. So please put your hands together to welcome Bankole onto the stage.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having us at Flutterwave. It's a pleasure to be here to share our thoughts on what we think the future of fintechs will be. So I think I'll start from history. 10 years ago, the stats on the screen kind of show you that only 23% of Africans had access to formal financial services on the continent. Today is a lot much higher. I think where focus now is on the future and, how do we get to 80% of everyone on the continent with access to formal financial services, and what are the things that we need to do? Again, so today we've seen remarkable change and success, and what is really driving this change and success that we've seen. I think we've tried to break it into 3 buckets. The first one is government. On the regulation side, we're beginning to see government focus on, incentives, creating enabling environments, and, adoption of modern tools, reg tech, etc., to monitor the sector. On the supply side, fintechs, innovators like ourselves, continue to meet demand and create solutions to everyday problems on the continent. Demand side, there's still a lot to be done. There's still a lot of unbanked people on the continent, and consumer behavior, especially on the African continent, you've got a lot of young, savvy people. Consumer behavior continues to change. So for us fintechs, we've kind of driven financial inclusion and digital financial services on the continent really through four levers: innovation, access, pricing, and perception. We've also taken a disaggregated approach. I think for us at fintechs, as fintechs, we believe there's a service for everyone out there, whether it's from banking and digital payments, to lending, to savings, wealth management, using banking transaction data to provide services to customers, cryptocurrency, DLT technology, insurance tech, etc. We've taken a service delivery, service-driven approach to understand that, on the continent, there's a service for everyone. So, with what's happening today, I think the reality is digital age is here, and it's here to stay. And, on the continent, what we're looking at, what's driving all these changes, we're beginning to get more and more physical infrastructure, mobile first, and mobile growing extensively on the continent. That's internet penetration. That's driving the growth that we're seeing today. African regulators are beginning to throw in more and more support. So we've got lots of initiatives on the continent, startup bills. Nigeria signed its startup bill last week. Startup bills providing protection for IP, providing guarantees for and support for funding for new startup, etc. We've got Kenya that has their draft bill. We have Tunisia as well. We've also got a lot of initiatives going on the continent. There's open banking being discussed across various markets, etc. Funding as well. In 2021, collectively, fintechs raised 1.9 billion, which is more than they had raised in 2 previous years before then. So I think for us, all of this just kind of sets the tone for where we believe fintechs would be and on the continent and across the globe in the future. So this is an interesting case study. I'm Nigerian. I live in Lagos, Nigeria at the moment with my family, and I think it was last year, MTN Nigeria went to the stock market and did a public offer. Very interesting. It was the very first time that stock will be offered to the Nigerian public on a paperless basis. And, the stats were amazing. First of all, the public offer was oversubscribed. 90% of the people who participated in the public offer were first-time buyers, and they purchased through the digital solutions that were available, not the usual paper-based version. 75% of the successful applicants were women, and 55% of them were under 40. I mean, for us, this kind of sets the tone for the future, where today the focus of fintech, or the success of fintech, has been providing mainly digital financial services. We're looking at, this case study, and looking at many other opportunities that fintechs will bring to fore on the continent to support, growth of the continent. So these are some of the trends that we foresee in future. First of all, we believe that more Africans will have an online presence. As more Africans have an online presence, more businesses will come online. So it's a push and a pull. As more businesses come online, there will be more opportunities to make cross-border payments using various technologies like the DLT to facilitate value transaction between, businesses across different countries on the continent. Again, we see there will be access to capital will continue to improve because big data, machine learning would help, financiers make more and faster decisions around lending and, credit to their customers. We also believe that, broader financial development will happen with the, the example I gave around MTN. So you'd see things like capital markets, insurance companies, pension funds, etc., leveraging technology to provide service delivery to customers on the continent. Cash will still be there, and because of our prevalent problems on the continent with infrastructure, especially in the rural areas. But we think that fintechs will bridge that gap with offline solutions and offline channels. In many countries now, you've seen agent banking networks spring up, in what we would usually term or formerly termed as underserved or unserved areas, providing that bridge and connecting people to, digital financial services, etc. Some of the drivers we'll also see, open banking and APIs, will make a big difference. With that, we believe fintechs will be able to offer more services, to both the banked and unbanked today. Technology will continue to drive things. I think we used 5G here as an example. The reality with as new standards come out is, the lower standards, 3G, 4G becomes cheaper, more accessible to more people. And ultimately, there's a common good and benefit to everyone. Expansion of real-world use cases as well, offers like buy now, pay later, public offering subscriptions, people moving money around the world, paying their loved ones, etc. I think all of this will continue to, make the future brighter and good for, Africans and the fintechs. And I think I'd like to end with the critical success factors. We kind of see today a competition between, new players, the fintechs and the incumbents, but we think it should be partnerships between new players and the incumbents, the schemes, the telcos, the fintechs, everyone working together is win-win. We also think that the regulators will continue to support, they'll continue to drive both from a supply side, regulating technology, making policies and rules that are business-friendly available. And we think with that, it would continue to support growth in the fintech space. Strong change management as companies like ourselves continue to evolve and grow stronger. We think change management will be important, and would help grow. Risk as well, we know risk will be there, but we need to do a lot more to manage our risks as players in the industry, as regulators as well. So also, I think investors, I mentioned how we've raised collectively in 2021 1.9 billion. Amazing, most of that money has come from outside of the continent. We think with startup bills being passed in many countries, we will see a lot more homegrown funding on the continent as well. And we think Africa will continue to be a beautiful bride. Investors will continue to bring their money here as long as we continue to create value, solve real life problems. We believe strongly in that. And infrastructure, which we believe with the support of our regulators, partners, the OEMs, we think with the right infrastructure on the continent, the future would continue to remain bright. So, thank you very much.
Very much, Bankole. One of the reasons I am very excited about fintech is just, and actually technology in general, is just the ability of technology to solve real problems that we have on the continent. So I want to just take a moment and repeat something I saw on his slides, which was 90% of subscribers in the MTN's IPO were first-time participants in the capital markets. 90% of subscribers. I think that is the power. I think that just goes to show the power that technology and fintechs have for solving problems in our continent. 76% of successful applicants were women. When you look at the excluded on the continent, a predominant majority of them are women. And here we're seeing that actually participating in this through the power of technology, women are now disproportionately represented. And 85% were under the age of 40. So these are the sort of statistics that give us hope that give us sort of something to look forward to as we think about what fintechs have, or what fintechs can do on the continent. So thank you very much, Macaulay. Our next speaker is Benjamin, who is the founder and lead consultant of Chain Advice. And he's going to be talking to us about crypto, blockchain, and all these sort of, this is the one part of the financial system that people are very, very interested in, but not a lot of people know about. So it's a pleasure to welcome Benjamin to the stage.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me start with a short story. Two years ago, I was sitting at a lounge with one business leader in Kenya, trying to explain what Bitcoin was, or other cryptocurrency in extension. Interestingly, after 2 minutes of explanation, this gentleman asked me, "So, did you carry some Bitcoin with you so that I can see?" Well, this morning I didn't carry any Bitcoins with me. So the misconception about Bitcoin, about cryptocurrencies, in my opinion, has come from what I have called the crypto poison. And why I call it the crypto poison is the way crypto started several years ago, and the way it was adopted with a lot of speculation. And that, in my view, is what has pushed away many corporate executives from learning what blockchain is. It was until 2 years ago that I started seeing in Kenya bank leaders and corporate executives starting to invite us and have a genuine conversation about blockchain and impacts of cryptocurrency in the digital economy. So today, I'm just going to make this presentation about blockchain and crypto in the future of fintech. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just use a few examples, because sometimes when you have this conversation, people say that, really, where is it being used? Is there an example of where crypto or blockchain is actually being used? And my answer is yes. You've heard the previous speakers, including MasterCard and Ngozi, have mentioned about cryptocurrency. So these are the major players when it comes to when it comes to global payments. And I'm happy that we can see such a word in their slides, because it is not just about the speculation. There is an aspect of actual payment. There is an actually processing payments using this technology. So I'm going to give you an example of a friend of mine known as George in Kenya. When I engaged him last year in December, I realized that he's working on a project known as Shamba Records, which is based on the blockchain. And what he's trying to do is trying to digitize the operation of smallholder farmers. What is his aim? Is trying to help smallholder farmers to aggregate their farm produce, and also help them to have data that will then make it possible for them to access finance. Banks, as we know it, will require you to have some data for you to even access some financing. But where do smallholder farmers, where do most SMEs get their data? Because most of these farmers do not think about keeping records. They do not keep records on how much they harvested. They don't keep records on what it cost them to actually do the farming. So at the end of the day, it becomes difficult to even track their income, because everything that is harvested, they treat it as a profit. And they never remember to actually deduct the costs, or rather keep clear records of this. Another interesting application in cryptocurrency is an app called Benkiko. And Benkiko is trying to, is using cryptocurrency to provide micropayments. Yeah? focusing a lot on the gig economy. People are doing a lot of work online and should be paid or want to be paid with crypto, or those who are finding it difficult to receive other mode of payments. Particularly for those who are doing online jobs with providers or where their customers are outside the country or outside the continent. Many of them try to use this application. And in their first 6 months of trial, they processed over 10,000 transactions. That just shows the potential of such applications. Then a community inclusion currency known as, used in Mukuru kwa Jenga, I'm trying to remember its name, Sarafu. I actually tested Sarafu the first time I heard of it, and it was interesting because by USSD, I was able to create an account, yeah, and once I created an account, they rewarded me with some 50 Sarafu, which is sort of a cryptocurrency, and within this application, which I accessed using a USSD, I was able to see a list of vendors who are accepting Sarafu within that platform and within that community. So this is only meant for particular communities. That's why it's called a community inclusion currency. And it's been piloted by, in Mukuru in Nairobi with the help of, or rather with partnership of the Red Cross. Then Kotani Pay, one of the most interesting applications about blockchain that I've seen, because when I have a conversation with people about blockchain, the question they ask, especially when I talk about financial inclusion, is how do you help people to access blockchain, or rather use blockchain when they can't access the internet? And Kotani Pay, built on the Celo blockchain, has really done a good job to make it possible to access or transact on a blockchain without using a smartphone. So they actually use a USSD and make it possible for these people to transact and receive money. And within this application, they have a decentralized exchange as well, which makes it possible to convert a stablecoin that they use on that platform known as Celo USD or CUSD into fiat currency, yeah? So this, too, is a really good application showing that despite the fact that blockchain and cryptocurrency may still have a number of issues that make it immature for certain industries, there are actually applications that are being used right now that can be scaled. Then, with regard to KYC and AML, I had Ngozi talk about KYC, as well as Sitoyo did mention KYC. I was having a conversation with the regional director for Gray. Gray is a fintech company, it's sort of an online bank, and she asked me a question: how long does it take in Kenya for you to open a bank account? Can you be able to take your phone and just open a bank account from the beginning to the end? And I realized that really in Kenya and in most countries, you still need to go and produce some physical documents. You still need to go and take your KRA PIN certificate, a copy of your ID, and interestingly, we keep producing this even when you've already produced this several times. So how then can we try to simplify the KYC process? How can we automate this? I believe that blockchain, in its decentralized nature, has the capability to help with regard to providing a decentralized KYC platform that would then help different partners to be able to reduce the process of customer onboarding, because that is really key to increasing financial inclusion in Africa. Then talking of e-Naira, the CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currencies, Nigeria is now, I believe they're still doing their pilot. Okay, it's in the market right now. And I read an article yesterday that they still face a challenge with adoption with regard to e-Naira, but it just shows that there are chances that in the future we could see more applications or more adoption of central bank digital currencies to increase payments across Africa. Then the Binance Pay. This is the largest exchange in the world, a cryptocurrency exchange. And they have an application known as Binance Pay that is making it possible to make crypto payments. Then closer home to companies that all of you know, Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, all these companies are providing capabilities in the cryptocurrency industry with regard to payment. Yeah? According to Visa, in the Q1 of 2022, they processed up to $2.5 billion in crypto-linked transactions. That means a lot. MasterCard is providing as well capabilities for companies to accept crypto payments. PayPal has made it possible to buy, to sell and store cryptocurrency within their platform. And the list goes on and on. So, and lastly, Google partners with Coinbase to accept crypto payments on its cloud services. So Google is a global institution. We look at all these institutions, all these companies that are doing something in crypto or trying to provide capabilities in the crypto or blockchain industry, and these are all companies that have billions of users on their platform. And what that tells me is that increases the chances of crypto adoption or crypto users in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Looking forward to unpacking more on how we can unlock the power of blockchain in Africa. So that was it for the initial presentations. We're now going to go into a panel discussion with all of the speakers. So may I please invite you all to come and join me on stage. Wonderful. So we're going to go and just have a brief conversation just on various different topics on focus around fintech. So I'm going to start with you, Sitoyo. And I'm going to come back to what the stat that I love numbers, so I'm still going to come back to that 1% higher GDP per capita. What are the outcomes that we've seen in terms of driving financial inclusion that we've seen the fintech ecosystem sort of help generate? What more needs to be done to help consumers move towards greater financial health?
No, thank you. And I think first, over the last 15 years, we've been, since M-Pesa started, we've been driving financial inclusion. So, for example, in Kenya, it's moved from 23% to 84% plus, and that's, I think, the third highest in Africa. But what we've seen is financial health has not moved on. So, and financial health means providing access to savings, wealth management, insurance, and so on that help cushion customers' lives as they move on. But I think when it comes to how do we accelerate this, a couple of things, we look at it from a two-sided ecosystem. So there's what we do from the consumer side of it, and that's the more known part of M-Pesa. Today we have 52 million customers using the service. But I think the role that SMEs and micro SMEs play in our ecosystem on the other side of it, which we call the business, it's all about empowering businesses and seeing how businesses grow. And we've seen this becoming now a critical enabler to driving financial inclusion and financial health. So rather than look at it also just from the consumer side of it, businesses are actually, and everyone is an entrepreneur in Africa. Everyone does a side hustle in Africa. I earn the salary, but I do 10 different things. I support different people. And what we're beginning to see is how do we enable small businesses make payments? And it's not about collection. So I think it's important that for this to really grow, it's about how do we enable small businesses to make payments. Cash is good, and everyone says cash is bad. Cash is good, but the way a small business makes payments is very expensive today. We've solved it for our customer, we've not solved it for business. I should be here in Kigali and running my small businesses and making payments while I'm seated here. So that part of it is now driving the consumer side of it. So it's an exciting time in this two-sided part on how it drives the financial inclusion part, but also the financial health part of it.
Excellent. I think one of the things that we talk about, especially in my country, Nigeria now, because we're obviously nowhere near where you are in the mobile money game, but when we think about sort of agents and agency banking, part of it is that 7% of the transactions that happen there is cash. So it's very interesting for me to hear you say that cash is good, because a lot of fintech founders will tell me that actually my biggest competition is cash. So I think that's a very interesting point. Ngozi, I'm going to come to you because I want to continue on the theme you started in your presentation around collaboration and how everybody needs to come together to help build this ecosystem. Can you maybe share some of the best examples you've seen on collaboration? What made these examples sort of best in class, and what made them work?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And I think it's interesting when we think of partnerships at MasterCard, there are multiple layers, right? So for example, if you think of the telecom industry, like Sitoyo was talking about, there's this whole concept of, let me take the SME example, enabling an SME to make payments, right? Now, these SMEs also buy goods abroad, like in places like China and Turkey, right? So it's important for us to allow the telcos to leverage our technology to equip that SME using their wallet, their mobile money wallet, to make a payment to a supplier in China, right? So that's just one example if you look at the SME space. Now, if you look at fintechs, for example, let me take a micro-lending institution, right? We often talk about the fact that SMEs in our part of the world don't have access to credit. Well, or when they do have access to credit, it's expensive. Well, the reason for that is because the lenders obviously need information about the SME, right, to be able to lend. So that's why I will slightly disagree with Sitoyo that cash is good, because if they don't have a digital footprint, then the lender doesn't know this SME, and therefore it's harder for them to lend. So we work with some fintechs. We equip them with data scoring technology to allow them, within the realms of the data that they have, to be able to lend to these SMEs. Then if you think more broadly as well, another type of partnership we do is, so many people may not be familiar with the fact that we have what we call the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth, right? And there, it's not necessarily commercial partnerships, it's about how do we invest in the ecosystem, right? How do we, for example, in the agri-space, what sort of investment do we put into the agri-space using our technology that allows that ecosystem to be modernized, right? So there's a partnership beyond the commercials as well. So if I were to summarize the types of partnerships we do, I think it's very interesting that we look at it quite differently. Some of our partners are looking for ways to engage differently with their consumers. We enable that through our technology. Some are looking to get cash out of their ecosystem, especially like in the mobility sector. For example, we have working on a partnership with Uber where they're looking for a way to disburse payouts to their drivers. So operational efficiency partnerships are there. It really depends on what the goal of the partner is, but that's where technology comes in. We're able to make it fungible to adapt to the needs of the partner.
Thanks, Ngozi. Speaking of technology, I'm going to come to you, Benjamin, on blockchain and crypto. And you already started on that theme in your presentation, but I'd like to dig a little bit deeper, because we hear a lot around sort of crypto adoption across the continent. I think 2 or 3 of our countries are among the top users of crypto in the world. What sort of sectors or business challenges, apart from maybe remittances and payments, how can we think about sort of low-hanging fruits for blockchain adoption in Africa? And maybe speak a little bit to what needs to happen to unlock us using sort of blockchain to solve these problems on the continent.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the first thing that I look at when I look at blockchain capabilities and potential in Africa, I look at the agricultural sector. Africa, I think you can't talk about a low-hanging fruit if we cannot talk about our agricultural economy. I think that, as the example that I gave, we should look and leverage blockchain technology and other technologies like AI to be able to provide for these farmers a platform to be able to create, or rather to access data that is important for them in their farming process, and also enable them to deliver, or rather deliver the data that, all the data that is important throughout their farming process. That is whether the input to the process of their farm produce reaching the market. So there is a part of it also that it involves reducing, or rather reducing the intermediation of the value chain for farmers. I mean, for a small farmer in the rural Kenya, with a lot of intermediation, it takes a lot of time for them to receive payments for their goods. So another season has already come. He hasn't received payment for the last season, and so he doesn't have money to properly participate in the current season. So these are things that I think blockchain can easily help to reduce the intermediation, or also disintermediate the financing of rural farmers and make it possible for them to access this financing. Another thing I also think of is in the education sector, the issue of counterfeiting of certificates. I mean, Sitoyo, will tell you about what happens during election season in Kenya, where everybody is trying to defend their degree, or whether or not they actually attained one. The interesting thing is that blockchain can actually make it possible to issue certificates on this decentralized platform right at the point of graduation. This way, Benjamin, who graduated from the University of Nairobi, do not need to really struggle to provide a verifiability to my certificate. The employer can actually just upload my certificate on the platform and be able to get all data, including when I joined the university, my grades, and all the details that are important, which means the employer would not need to call the university, yeah, because that happens a lot. And by the way, in most countries of Africa, the problem of counterfeiting certificates is really big. And beyond certifications, also the process of just tracking, or rather managing the skills, yeah, accessing employer being able to access the skills, or rather the skills journey of an employee if they are well stored on the blockchain. I think it's easier than if I have to come with all my certificates that are 50% not verifiable. So there are other use cases, but I think that the important ones largely revolve around agriculture. Also reducing intermediation in the value chains. That includes in the process, in the KYC process. Also includes, you can improve digitization in the process of access to loans.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Benjamin. Bankole, I'm going to come to you because in your presentation, you spoke about sort of regulators being the infrastructure as we talked about what is going to happen in the future. And, you know, just Benjamin just talked about blockchain and some of the new uses. So just thinking about how you engage the regulator, especially when sometimes you're ahead of your regulator, how well do you think that leaders in the African fintech landscape are educating regulators and helping them to understand what fintechs do? And what more could be done to really ensure that you're bringing your regulator along, especially as the nature of the work that we do is quite sort of forward-leaning?
Okay, so thank you, Maya, for the question. I think you kind of helped to answer that, which is starting point where we struggle with regulators is that we're ahead of them. You know, fintechs innovate, we're very fast, we respond to consumer needs, we try to solve real-life problems. Usually you find that the rules are aged, take time to develop, and not as flexible as we would like them to. But what can we do better, and are we doing well? I think we're not doing enough. I think we can do a lot more. You know, I think the most important thing is the realization that we all expect or want the same things with regulators. You know, typical conversations with regulators, what are their key concerns? Consumer issues, risk and fraud, access to shared and managed services and infrastructure, etc. You know, on the fintech side, it's the same thing. We want adoption. How do you drive adoption? Making it safe, making sure people can build trust around the products and solutions. You want access to shared infrastructure. You want to make sure that, look, services are interoperable. So, I mean, these are many examples of how we want the same things with the regulator, you know. But how do we get the same things with the regulators? You know, I think one of the key things we need to do is build trust. How do we build trust? We need to continue to engage. You know, regulators need to continue to be open to listen to fintechs. Fintechs need to be open to listen to regulators and continue to speak to regulators. I know we all are innovators. We all will continue to innovate. You know, regulators should accommodate us. And, you know, one of the ways we're beginning to see that change now is with the regulatory sandboxes. I must say, great initiative, but there might still be a couple of issues of trust around how will my IP be managed. If I bring a new innovative idea to the sandbox, how is my IP protected? Judicial system on the continent is not the best or the greatest, you know. So I would rather not share my IP publicly than share it and then go to court later to be fighting for redress that someone else has, you know, stolen that intellectual property. So how could regulators continue to help us, you know, more initiatives around, you know, regulatory sandboxes, more initiatives on intellectual property protection on the continent, you know, some of the startup bills or laws that have been passed recently have those provisions in there, but it's still not enough. I think we need a lot more done. And I think we all just need to work with an open mind, both the regulators and the fintechs. And, you know, that idea of wanting the same thing is critical, and it's what we need to continue to push and foster.
Thank you so much. So the title of this session is What Does the Future Hold for Fintechs in Africa? So I'm going to go around the table and ask you guys, you know, in the next minute and a half, just tell me, and actually the tables are turned because usually my clients ask me this question. So I'm really excited to be on the other side of the table now, asking you all what you think. And I'm going to start with Ngozi. What do you think is going to be the future? What does the future hold for fintechs? And what is the most exciting development that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I think change will continue. I'm most excited about the role of artificial intelligence and how that will help us leapfrog, you know, the digitization in Africa. AI is already here, right? So if you think about it, certain things that we do today, credit scoring, business analytics, a lot of that is powered by what we call this narrow version of AI. But that's very, especially in Africa, that's very quickly evolving towards more advanced AI, which is based all around pattern recognition. We're seeing a lot of that in the agri-space in Africa. So I'm very excited about how companies like MasterCard, working with telcos and fintechs, can really accelerate that across different sectors in Africa. So that's what excites me the most.
So I think fintechs will lead the fourth industrial revolution. I think if you look at what we've achieved today with very little, especially on the continent in Africa, I think we will continue to do a lot more of that. We'll continue to solve real-life challenges, everyday challenges on the continent. I'm really particular about Africa because, I mean, if you look at mobile phone technology, for example, look at how it's revolutionized and changed lives on the continent. Africa was able to do that because we could easily leapfrog, and the rest of the world had legacy infrastructure to worry about. I think if we model fintechs the same way, we're really going to be the drivers for change and success on the continents in Africa. And I say this with all humility and respect. I know a lot of our regulators are in the room today. So this is me reaching out, making this call to say, let's work together and let's get the continent to where we need the continent to be by maybe 2050. Thank you.
I think for me, a couple of things. First, I think we need to stop using the word fintech. We need to start using the word digital ecosystem, because I think that showcases what exactly we are. We have seen, fintechs and valuations running, so there's a lot that's coming out for innovation for the sake of innovation and not really solving what problem are we trying to solve. So I prefer using the word digital ecosystem because it means we're going to be more collaborative as an industry to be able to deliver products and services. I think the word purpose is still something we need to keep at the center of what we do. It has to be purpose, people, then the profits will follow. I think sometimes it is the other way around, so we just need to ensure, for me, I think that needs to continue to be what drives us. I think the technology is exciting. I think Go's just spoken about it, whether it's blockchain, whether it's AI, big data. I think the continent is on the verge of super apps that we're launching. We can't roll out all apps. The average $40 smartphone can keep only 5 apps. Every fintech is developing an app. So I think that part of the ecosystem and leveraging on the rails, and for me, this thing of sharing is really important. We've developed, let's say, for example, a lending app. Why should MTN, Airtel do the same thing over and over? There are 69 digital lenders in Kenya. Each 69 has their own lending platform. It's time Africa shares these resources. It's time that people leverage on the rails that are there to actually grow the economy. With regards to just a comment on the regulator, I think on all of us, most businesses, our first risk is cybersecurity and then the regulations. I think it's the wrong way of looking at it. Regulators are not a risk. They're actually an opportunity, and I think it should move from being put as a top corner as our number one risk. It should be actually number one opportunity, and this is in terms of working with them to actually, they should know what you're going to launch, and I think they're just like us. They're all learning, and I think we should not look at them and us, and I like the part that you said, it's and I think if we also as an industry look at the regulator in a different light as an opportunity, I think that'll change things.
Benjamin?
Thank you. Yeah, I think the future and let me use the word fintech for the last time. The future of fintech, in my view, is going to be a lot mobile-based, particularly if I look at the area of cards. In my view, one problem that I usually see is you have an issue with your card, and then you have to really actually go to the bank, to the physical bank, to sort this issue. And in the previous months, we've had a conversation with a particular fintech company, and we're talking about how can it be made possible that if there is an issue with my card, I can actually go into my app and start a process of ensuring that I get my card replaced. And I'm happy that M-Pesa launched their virtual card that then makes it easier for such. So generally, fintech will be mobile-based. So every solution is looking to get into an app, including physical cards looking to get into an app. And on regulation, for just a minute, I think regulators need to balance between consumer protection and consumer enablement. Regulations shouldn't be, I'm conscious about the fact that regulators are looking at their environment, their jurisdictions, and trying to protect the consumer. But they should also think about how do we enable the consumer. And by creating an enabling environment for the fintech companies, for the startups, whether you talk through Sandbox, you're actually making it possible for the consumer to access these services. Thank you.
Thank you. So to just do a quick recap of the conversations we've had, I think for me a powerful message that has come out is, one, technology has, and we've already started to see and demonstrate that it can have the power to solve real problems for real people that we have on the continent. I think a second key theme that is coming out of the discussions is this idea of partnership and collaboration, right? And it's not just partnership and collaboration with other people who look like you, but it's for people across sort of I don't want to use the word the aisle, but bringing everybody onto the table, including the regulators, and seeing them as a part of the solution for the problems that we solve. I think a third piece is just this idea of innovation, the idea that, look, digital is really mobile-driven on our continent, right? And so it's be interesting to see how that evolves over the future. So let me just say a big thank you to Benjamin, to Sistoyo, to Bankole, and to Ngozi for spending the time this morning discussing what the future of the digital ecosystems for Africa is. Thank you very much.
Thank you.